3A Paintball's Invincible Power. This is the preferred gun for the guy in open play who talks about how he's gotten hit with frozen paintballs before and how much worse they hurt. It's the gun for the guy who gets jealous of other players because they have a larger air tank or they're wearing a pod pack. He's the type who's really looking for any excuse possible as to why the teams are unbalanced. When the game starts, he proceeds to sit facing backwards at the home bunker for no less than 3 minutes, yelling at his 2 renting buddies to give him cover fire because a ball whizzed by his vicinity. When the heat dies down, he firmly grips the 9-ounce CO2 tank attached to his invincible power, blind fires 3 shots in the general direction of the other team, and moves to an equally useless back bunker, where he will sit until time expires. All sweat present on him is fear sweat. Invincible Power. What a name for a marker, and probably the most outrageous name I've ever heard in paintball. This thing. It's invincible. Looks about as sturdy as that toothpick bridge I made in grade school. With its 9-inch barrel, and its no foregrip, and its hose directly into the vertical adapter ergonomics, and its plastic frame. Yeah, this is invincible. For some reason, it's missing the screw in the back to adjust velocity, though I'd wager that happened from previous owner fiddling rather than factory negligence. That doesn't explain why the Cocker-style D10 has lost its spring and ball bearing. Oh well, I got spares. There was nothing in the box besides the marker and barrel, and it was sold as new old stock, and I believe it. Some asshole actually tried to outbid me to get this thing. You fucker, making me spend almost $60 on this thing. Nah, it's okay, I'm made of money. There's not a scratch on the outside, but when I took it apart to replace the deteriorated valve O-rings, there was plenty of rust dust from the valve spring. I would normally assume the unfitting name came from the Chinese manufacturer that produced this aluminum and plastic spider clone, but it was sold by an American company, 3A Paintball, which stands for Against All Authority. Wow, great name. So edgy, takes me right back to the early 2000s punk era. 3A was a budget-oriented brand, most famous for incorporating somewhat risque drawings into most of their products. To their credit, they were one of the first paintball companies to offer highly stylized tank graphics in the early 2000s, something that would become far more popular more than a decade later. These gaudy, amateurish, commissioned from DeviantArt-looking, scantily clad women holding paintball gear were what 3A thought would be all the rage with the wannabe badass teens they were trying to court. Honestly, most of it is just horribly embarrassing looking. Oh my god, what's wrong with their shoulder? The box to the Invincible Power shows a woman who was clearly holding a normal pistol before the gun in question was photoshopped into her hands. Look, the drop forward is going through her fingers. Why is this sexy? She's clearly falling over. And has no loader, tank, or even a mask for that matter. The side of the box shows the various colors the marker was available in, and was marked incorrectly for the gun inside it. Also, there are some differences between the gun and the rendering on the box. I guess at one point the gun would have come with a matching anodized frame, a different drop, and a fade on the barrel that was in the middle rather at the end. But 3A was known more for their accessories than their guns. They sold the knockout barrels, which were one of the cheapest barrel kits on the market, and of course their various tank offerings. The regs 3A included with their bottles were the regulator equivalent of the Metadyne Thumper, and shared the gun's passion for leaking and generally making their owners feel unsafe holding them while pressurized. What reviews of 3A tanks one can still find on the internet lament of gauges that blew when aired up for the first time, leaky fill nipples, and how the tank output pressure would fluctuate wildly when being aired up, frequently blowing burst discs in the process, and finally how useless 3A's customer service was. I don't know if they used rejected center flag rags on their bottles or they used in-house rags at one time, but they seem to have just the worst luck with all of them. Apparently most of the company's sales were through eBay, and eventually their count was suspended. If that wasn't bad enough, 3A was the only paintball brand I can think of that had their products blacklisted from pbreview.com, because employees were caught creating accounts solely to give positive reviews about their own products. They pulled the same thing on PB Nation. How fucking embarrassing. So anyway, I go to shoot this thing for the first time. Gotta see how she handles. And the first thing I notice is that my tank won't thread in all the way. There's way more resistance than there should be. I've seen this on other cheap guns before. Sometimes their air source adapters are milled too close to spec without allowing any wiggle room for tank manufacturer tolerances. Some tanks are worse than others. I found a CO2 tank that threaded in fine. It's probably best to test the marker on CO2, since that's what most people would have used on it at this price point. So here are the results. Let's see what she's shooting now after a few warm-up shots. Uh-oh. Seems we've got a small problem. The bolt has gone too far back. It appears the stopper has disintegrated. Well, it seems the urethane bumper, let's say it's past its expiration date. It seems just about anything made of this material has about a 10-year shelf life before it turns into mush. I thought this might happen, but not this quickly for sure. Seriously, why was it even made of urethane? Every other bumper I can think of is made of Buna. You can see several moments where chunks of the bumper are flying out of the gun while I'm distracted by the steadily rising velocity. Eventually it got so gummed up, the hammer was forced back behind the sear entirely. I've never seen anything like that before. I had to use a swab to push the assembly out. After throwing in a replacement bumper made from the proper rubber material from a Spider, it was good to go once more. Honestly, after replacing the bumper and swapping to an HPA tank that actually threaded in, the gun shot fine. It's just like a basic Spider, which is no accident, of course. The whole thing is just a slightly more upscale first-generation Spider Victor. Since there was no velocity adjustment screw, FPS hovered in the 250s but stayed consistent, and honestly, the gun seems totally usable now. Maybe it's slightly more invincible than I thought. And now a word from our sponsors.
So you want to buy a Planet Eclipse EMAC? Well, I think you suck. You should buy the Invincible Power Paintball marker instead. The engineers over at 3A Paintball have created the best gun you'll ever use. I'm not exaggerating at all. So your buddy bought this Spider Imagine? Well, I hope he spontaneously combusts. I'll explain in great detail just how much better the Invincible Power is. The Invincible Power's velocity spring is better because it's longer for twice the shooting power. The bolt is better because the air inlet holds larger size allows for maximum efficiency. And the hammer's better because it's exactly the same. The gun is absolutely guaranteed to make you invincible on the paintball field because the more you shoot, the faster it gets with no adjustment needed. What? You don't think that's safe? Shut up! Do you want to be invincible or not? So don't be like these losers and buy it. Just buy it, do it. Stop thinking so hard, you're gonna hurt your brain. So go on eBay and add this gun to your cart already, along with one of those 3A tanks with the manga chicks on it. Then you'll be the coolest dude in open play.
Sorry for the lack of reviews, my mind has been on delay. Please forgive me for there are more reviews on the way.